Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh arrived in Cairo earlier this week to begin discussions on possibly reaching a long-term truce with Israel and carrying out a prisoner exchange. But Haniyeh has now been joined by a delegation from Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah faction in the hopes that unity talks derailed by the cancellation of Palestinian elections and the Gaza conflict can be resumed. Those talks are now reportedly on hold amid a dispute between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority centered in part on the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. So still unity elusive there among the Palestinians. Well, for more, let's speak with Hussein Kamel Hariri, who's former assistant to the Egyptian foreign minister, and he joins us from Cairo. And Mr. Hariri, thank you so much for joining us. Let me ask you, first of all, let's pull out to the bigger picture. What is Egypt trying to achieve, both, I guess, in some way for itself and for the region, by really stepping up its efforts, its mediation efforts between Israel and the Palestinians, and also within the Palestinians?
Well, from 2006, many ceasefires between Israel and Hamas. We've been involved with the Palestinians in trying to push them to reach an inter-Palestinian reconciliation agreement to form a national unity government. And what we are doing now is nothing. It's not novel. It's nothing new. It's a continuation of our role in the region, and we are going to stick to that till someday the two-state solution would be in place for the interests of peace, security, and stability, and for the interests of the Palestinians, the Israelis, and the people of the region. So we are doubling our efforts, first of all, to consolidate the ceasefire. Secondly, to start as quickly as possible the reconstruction of the in Gaza. Thirdly, to bring the Palestinian factions together once again in order to implement the previous agreements that they have signed in Cairo for a national reconciliation. So this is the Egyptian plan, and we keep working on this plan until of course the Palestinians, whether in the Palestinian Authority or in Gaza Strip, could really be in a position to seriously carry out their previous engagement and commitments to Palestinian reconciliation.
Right. Now, all of the things you just outlined will require a close cooperation between Egypt, the Sisi government, and Hamas, which, of course, is an Islamist group that has certainly ideological links, if not more, for example, with the Muslim Brotherhood movement in Egypt, with which, of course, the Sisi government has had its issues. Could you define for us as much as you can the relationship or the attitude between Egypt or the Egyptian government and Hamas?
Well, from an Egyptian point of view, Hamas exercises power in Gaza. We have to deal with Hamas as a de facto government or de facto administration of the Gaza Strip. We have joint borders with Gaza, and we have to deal with whoever exercises control over the Strip. On the other hand, for us, Hamas is part of the Palestinian national movement, part of the Palestinian resistance movement, and we are dealing with it in this way. So, of course, we had our disagreements with Hamas in the past, but now we have turned the page, and I guess they also on their part turned the page. And I recall that Hamas said that they no longer are part of the Muslim Brotherhood or the international organization of the Muslim Brotherhood worldwide. But never mind about this aspect of the problem. We in Egypt have put this aside, and we are dealing with Hamas. And as you said earlier, sir, that CAIRO has received Ismail Haniyeh yesterday, and he met with senior Egyptian officials, and we will keep dealing with them with the hope that someday the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, Fatah and Hamas, could reach an agreement on the formation of a national unity government in Palestine.
Now, I want to ask you, following the successful Egyptian mediation between Israel and Hamas to end the current round, the most recent round of fighting, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken paid a visit to Cairo. There have been, prior to that, concerns, or I wouldn't say concerns, but speculation that relations between the incoming Biden administration and the Egyptian government could be, to some degree, less close or less cooperative than they were with the Trump administration, but that now perhaps Washington has seen that Cairo plays an invaluable role in the region, especially in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Is that the sense there in Cairo, that maybe something was proven to the incoming U.S. administration by what happened?
Well, first of all, Egyptian-American relations are strategic in nature. And I guess both various successive American administrations from 1979, the year we signed the peace treaty with Israel, till today, whether Republicans or Democrats, and the Egyptian government for the last 30 years or more, have always prized what we call the strategic partnership between the United States and Egypt. We have common interests, mainly peace and security in the region, that would benefit the Palestinians, the Israelis, and the Arabs. On the other hand, to a certain extent, when in last January, there were many press reports that maybe relations between the two countries would hit a wall. But I think that the second phone call between President Biden and President Sisi on May 24th last proved that relations between the two countries are really strategic in nature. And in this second phone call between the American president and the Egyptian president, the two sides, the two governments, the American and the Egyptian governments, committed themselves to working towards peace, to reconstruction in Gaza, and discussed other questions, regional crisis in the region, namely the situation in Libya, and last but not least, the question of human rights was brought up in this phone call, and this was very courageous step, either from President Biden or from President Sisi. And the two presidents agreed to continue discussing the question of human rights. And I get this as a very good point. It's a very good starting point to discuss this issue between the United States administration and the Egyptian government. And I think the near future, looks good. But the strategic partnership between Egypt and the United States remains solid, remains strong for the benefits and the interest of both countries and the interest of the region.
All right. I want to thank Hussein Kamal Hariri, former assistant to the Egyptian Foreign Minister, joining us on I-24 News. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.